Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and other MAGA luminaries often proclaim that the grave danger facing the West is civilizational erasure, which they claim is happening in Europe. Through its dangerous and misguided approach toward identity and immigration, Europe is destroying the West's distinctive legacy.
Fareed Zakaria, a renowned TV journalist, take on Donald Trump and his MAGA supporters' narrative of distinct Western identity. It is very interesting to see how Donald Trump sees, as per his own perspective, that Western civilization and its democratic values are decaying rapidly. Obviously, he blames liberal ideology of Western civilization and immigration, which are changing Western demography, that accommodates peoples from every culture. See, what actually Western civilization and its values are, that Trump failed to comprehend. What ideologies and moral values actually make Western identity great in the world.
But the West's defining character has not been tribal or religious solidarity. That describes most of the world. The West's precious, almost unique achievement has been the limitation of state power. Since Magna Carta in 1215, the West gradually placed constraints on rulers through rights for citizens, independent courts, a sovereign church. That inheritance is what made the West democratic and prosperous. It's also what made it stable. Citizens could dissent, businesses could invest, and civil society could flourish because power was bounded by law. The second Trump administration has moved sharply to erode these traditions. In Minneapolis, 2 people exercising their First Amendment rights were shot dead. There and elsewhere, federal officers have been operating masked, often in unmarked vehicles, making arrests without judicial warrants. The optics and the felt reality are of authoritarian policing, state power that is unbounded. And it's more than optics. This administration has used its powers in stunningly aggressive ways, often slow-walking its obedience of court rulings, delaying them so much as to be sometimes defying them de facto. The Trump administration has declared war on civil society, media, universities, non-governmental organizations, law firms, and even private businesses. The Justice Department's plans to investigate organizations like George Soros's Open Society Foundations, with the president describing it as racketeering, signal something dark: the criminalization of disfavored groups. It is the logic of Hungary and Russia imported into American politics. You don't rebut critics, you investigate. Then there's the legal profession. When the government threatens law firms, the state is using funding to compel political concessions from independent institutions. The press, always the early warning system of a free society, has faced what can only be described as relentless intimidation. Media outlets are sued and regulatory powers used publicly in an apparent attempt to coerce owners to toe the party line. In August, a federal judge found that the Trump administration's Federal Trade Commission investigation into the terrorist organizations, a concept so vague and ill-defined that even national security experts warn it could become a catch-all. Under existing law, knowingly providing material support for a designated foreign terrorist organization can carry up to 20 years in prison, and support can be construed broadly enough to include trivial assistance. That is how democracies decay, not by announcing that dissent is illegal, but by reclassifying dissent as something else. The administration talks about the West as if it were a heritage museum, symbols, slogans, identity. But the West's real genius is institutional, law that binds all, the strong and the weak, liberty protected not by benevolent leaders, but by constrained ones, a civil society robust enough to oppose the state without fearing that opposition will be treated as a criminal act. The West is not a bloodline, it is a bargain, power constrained, rights protected, coercion accountable. The greatest threat to the West is not that it is becoming too tolerant or too concerned about individual rights. It is the expansion of state power, making the West just like every other society in history, where the strong rule the weak. When seen in that light, we can say plainly that civilizational erasure is indeed happening. But it's not in Europe, it is here. where the American government grows comfortable with unbounded power and the country grows accustomed to living with it.